Hello, welcome to BBC World News. The chief executive of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, has called for new rules to regulate the internet. This just 2 weeks after a gunman used Facebook to live stream a terror attack on mosques in New Zealand. Well, Mr. Zuckerberg now says things must change, and in a statement he's called for regulation of what he describes as harmful content online, saying private firms can't do this alone. He says there should be new rules related to political advertising and the creation of common standards. There should be effective privacy and data protection for all users, with countries adopting a common framework. And he's also called for data portability. That means people should be able to move data from one service to another. Well, Dipayan Ghosh is a former public and privacy policy advisor to Facebook and also advised the Obama White House in the field of technology. Dipayan Ghosh, thanks very much for joining us. In a sense, a lot of this has to come anyway, I suppose, would be many people's views, but you presumably would welcome someone as significant and high profile as Mark Zuckerberg coming out and saying as much.
Absolutely. I think it's a good step in the right direction. Of course, Mark Zuckerberg has come out and said this under intense pressure from civil advocates in the United States and around the world, not to mention regulatory agencies and legislatures around the world. And so some might say that he's been pushed into a corner and is only saying what is going to happen anyway, and thereby trying to put himself and his company in a good position. But that would be a cynical take.
Well, it might be a cynical or realistic. We can look at it in various ways, because I think, in fact, you've said that markets must take a backseat to democracy, making the point that this is all about getting user attention, selling advertising, rather than some of the more sinister things that we see, like manipulating elections, etc. So if this is brought into play, would it have an impact on user attention, selling advertising, what users do or don't know about what's being done with their data?
Well, the devil would be in the details. The devil is always in the details when it comes to regulation, particularly when it comes to internet regulation. The internet is so complicated, and when people ask whether Facebook is a monopoly, we have to define the market, we have to define the ways that it makes money, and things become very complicated. So taking piecewise the various pieces that Mark Zuckerberg is calling for, which include essentially privacy, transparency, content moderation, these kinds of things. These are things that legislators in the United States and the United Kingdom and Europe and other parts of the world have been calling for the past 3, 4, 5 years, really, maybe even longer.
I mean, he is talking about a globally harmonized framework here, which I think most people at the moment would say that's nigh on impossible, isn't it?
It is very difficult. What we do have to remember is that this is an industry, and this particular company also are most responsive to the U.S. Congress for whatever reason. That has been the case. That has happened over the past 25 years, that this industry has become most responsive to the Congress, and that's why we saw Mark Zuckerberg appear before Congress and only in Europe and nowhere else. And so I think what the industry is going to try to push for is for Congress to work primarily with Europe and the UK to come to a set of norms that can then be distributed around the world in places like India, Latin America, other parts that are essentially not Russia and China and Iran.
Right.
And I think that's what he's really talking about here. So that the industry, it's in the industry's interest to levelize the regulatory playing field, so that they can really have certainty in the market when they try to develop their business model going forward.
Yeah, it feels like there's a sense of urgency, but we know it's going to take a very long time. Dipayan Ghosh, thank you very much indeed.
Of course, thank you.